Well, hello, everyone. I hope you are living the dream today. Have you ever faced certain things in your life, giant challenges, and thought, I am not qualified and I have no idea how I'm ever going to get there? I have to be honest with you. 30 years ago, I was sitting there, a young kid with dyslexia, no college diploma, no experience working with big companies. And I look at myself today a little bit in the mirror and I think, wow, now best-selling author, spoken on literally thousands of college campuses and speak for some of the biggest brands and the biggest corporations in the world. How in the world did that happen? And I want to share with you today exactly how that happened and how I did not do it by myself. I did it by really casting my show, the biggest player in my life, my wife, my business partner, and a dynamic performer and amazing business person herself. We're going to get to meet her today and figure out how together we made those twists and turns so that I could live my dream and she could as well. Welcome to the next 24 hours, where I'm going to give you real information you can really use to transform your life and work one day at a time. I'll be your host, Curtis Zimmerman. Welcome to the next 24 hours. I'm so excited to have Elle Zimmerman join us today. Now, Elle's had a huge part in making this podcast happen and everything to do with my career. So today, she's sitting here excited to jump into it. Hi, Elle. How you doing today?
I am doing fantastic, and I walked all the way down the hall to sit here with you. I'm so excited. I'm so grateful we get to work together. I'm so grateful you're in town, and I'm really excited to share the content of this podcast.
I'm so excited to share a little bit of your story and our story together with all of our listeners, but I love to start at the beginning with a little bit about you, where you're from, where you grew up, and a little maybe about your family even.
Wow. Okay. So I grew up in a little town in Ohio called Xenia, Ohio, and the big claim to fame is it's the only city in the entire United States that starts with a letter X. And it also had a very famous tornado in 1974 that was sort of a pivotal story for the town. And I lived in Xenia because my parents, my father was a golf professional and my grandfather was a golf professional, and he bought a golf course in Xenia. And my family settled there so my dad could run the golf course. And I ventured out of Xenia as quickly as I could. And I ended up traveling, going to college, and through my journey as a college student, I ended up at the Cincinnati Conservatory of Music in Cincinnati, which ended me then an opportunity to go on a cruise ship. And as a singer and a dancer, I took a contract on a cruise ship, and lo and behold, while I was performing on the cruise ship, there was another act. It was a mime and his partner, this little mime duo. And so, Curtis, that was you.
When we look back over our lives, there are certain pivotal moments. And I remember the very first time that I met you on the cruise ship. And I have to be honest, for me, it was love at first sight. And I know there's been some debate about that, but it totally was. And
you mean when you were kissing the other girl?
These are all rumors that had never been proven. Luckily, there was no Facebook at that time. So, it's funny because when you talk about that pivoting, I'd love for you to share the story a little bit about sitting at your first day at class in Cincinnati and you deciding to pivot and standing up and walking out. That's the empowerment I really try to get through these podcasts, is to tell people you have chances, you have opportunities, but you also have to take risks. And I know as an actress, you've heard no thousands and thousands of times through auditions, and that's a muscle that you've built. But share a little bit about just that journey on how you got to the Conservatory of Music real quickly. That'd be great.
So just to keep my education going, I enrolled at UC in their communications department, and it seemed like, okay, a good transition at the time. And I'm sitting in the orientation in the communication department in a building that I could out the window see the conservatory part of the campus. The auditorium buildings, it was just a beautiful sort of separated part of the college. And I remember sitting there looking out the window thinking, what am I doing here? That's where I want to be. And I was, it was like Charlie Brown teacher, wah, 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 wah. And I was like, I'm out of here. So I got up, left that orientation meeting, walked over to the conservatory and knocked on the door of the chair of the department, whose name is, he's still there, Aubrey Berg. And I said, I want to go here. And he said, he has a British accent. I won't try to do it. But he said, well, you must audition. And I said, well, I've missed the auditions and I want to go, not next year, I want to go this year. And he sort of laughed at me. And I said, and I started spewing off my resume of having performed with Up With People, having, trained in these courses, having studied with these voice teachers. And I really didn't back down. I was very polite, but I was very persistent. And he said, okay, fine, come tomorrow to the opening day of the freshman class where the freshmen perform for the upperclassmen in a showcase sort of setting, have 2 songs, and I don't think he thought I was going to come. So I went the next day and I had my 2 songs. I remember singing from Annie Get Your Gun, You Can't Get a Man with a Gun. And I remember singing Neverland from Peter Pan. And I sang, and I don't think they knew what to do with me. So I walked up to the piano player. His name is Terry LeBolt, an incredible mentor, vocal coach. And I said, okay, so am I in? And they both sort of looked at each other, and I had a resume. I handed my resume, and Terry said, can you dance? And I said, yes, I can dance, which if you know me, which you will, you're learning, I sing first, act second, and dance third at that time, because I was just entering into my studies as a musical theater artist. And they said, okay, come to class the next day. And if you're not aware of Cincinnati Conservatory of Music, it's an incredibly competitive school to get into. And I think that there was a little bit of a miracle happening, as well as just me being very confident, very persistent, very polite. And I think them not actually believing that I was going to show up. So that's it.
It's so important thank you so much for sharing that story. It's so important that you share that, because as we walk through the next 25 years together, I just want everyone to understand that concept of getting up from the life you have and the direction you're in and walking across the street, walking down the hall to your boss, walking to a company that's 2 states away is a choice. And Elle has consistently made those kinds of choices and encouraged me to do that throughout our lives. And that's really where the success, that little magic part is. And that's why it was so important for me that you shared that kind of as a baseline. So I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about what happened in that time from us getting married to say, hey, let's stay in Ohio for a while and start building out, performing as me as a mime and you doing regional theater and professional theater and, becoming an equity actress and all of those things. Can you fill in that a little bit, that portion of our life?
So I guess I'll just go back to what you said. So you moved to Ohio, and I was still in school, and the goal was to finish college and then potentially move. But there was still a couple years of my education in order to get the degree that I was working toward. So in the meanwhile, it was, what's Curtis going to do? What work is he going to find? And we quickly found out that people in Ohio didn't even know what a mime was. So, and like you said, Curtis, there was a gentleman, Charlie Chaplin, who obviously is very identifiable, and this guy was incredible. And he would show up at parties and events as Charlie Chaplin, and we kept saying, no, but he's not Charlie Chaplin. Curtis is not Charlie Chaplin. And again, some very divine timing, the gentleman who played Charlie Chaplin moved away. And so there actually was a gap. And so we saw that gap, and we started staying true to who Curtis was as a performer, to his brand. He didn't try to become Charlie Chaplin. He just tried to be the best him and share what his, how he would perform in a crowd, or what other talents he brought, whether it was adding in the juggling or adding in the magic. And so we just stayed true to his brand. But then we also had to figure out if in Hollywood, you would perform at amusement parks like Universal Studios, or I remember you talking about performing at Sylvester Stallone's kid's birthday party, and Ohio was very different. And we had Kings Island, but Kings Island didn't really pay. They paid minimum wage even for the performers, and it just wasn't the right fit. So we had to just continue to be open and learning and researching and asking questions. And at that same time, arts and education became a really big buzz. Howard Gardner's book, Multiple Intelligence, had just come out. And so the education system, teachers in particular, were starting to realize that not all students learn by hearing and seeing. Some of them learn by doing. And so the way to bridge that kinesthetic style of learning was through integrating the arts, particularly theater. So we started paying attention, started learning how could theater help teach social studies, help teach science. And we were also in a part of the country that really valued education, and they valued the arts, and bridging those was happening all around us through organizations, through our arts council, through independent organizations, one in particular called the Muse Machine. And these were like little businesses set up to bring arts into the schools. And so that's what we tapped into. So when Curtis first came to Ohio, we thought, we need to get him the same sort of work he was getting in California, amusement parks, celebrity birthday parties. And we found out, nope. So then the whole shift of the way he still stayed true to his brand, he still was Curtis the Mime, juggler, magic, but now how can he adapt it and be flexible so that he's offering what the market was asking for?
Everyone who's listening, I want to make it clear, she's saying so many important things. One is stay true to your brand. I don't want you to become someone else, but also look at the marketplace. And if the marketplace has changed, which we all know in every business I deal with now, the marketplaces are changing at lightning speed. I say it all the time, change is the new normal. So you have to be willing to also change your approach and learn new skills and go into new areas. So she covered that. I think that was huge.
And one thing I'd add is that it wasn't easy. It wasn't familiar. It was being willing to, like I did, get out of the chair, walk across campus, knock on the door, and put myself out there in a space that I wasn't used to being in. And so one of the biggest sort of examples of that is, so Curtis started doing his mime show for schools. That was sort of the first direction we moved. Well, I wouldn't say that was easy, because we had to still kind of sell and convince the schools that they needed an assembly of a mime that didn't speak. And how is that going to hold the attention of a junior high or high school student? But it was when Curtis was asked not just to perform, but to then teach the mime, to then teach teachers how to incorporate theater and mime in the classroom. He had to step into an area that he had never been in. He had to stand in front of educators, where, as Curtis has shared, he grew up with dyslexia, was the education in his family was never really valued. So he looked at teachers as, very important people, very educated people. And there was a part of him that felt that, how could I teach a teacher how to teach?
I was terrified. Period. I was terrified the night before my first workshop with teachers. I don't think I slept.
Yeah, so part of the transition and part of adapting to the new market was also being willing to step into spaces that felt so unfamiliar and felt like giant risks.
So I would love to just I can't say it enough in our own life and to you, and that is you not only opened so many doors that were uncomfortable for me to walk into, but you literally pushed me into those doors as a person and as a partner because you saw certain things in me that I didn't feel comfortable with, and you said, I don't care, I know you're going to go, you're going to excel. And you would join art organizations, and I had no idea about it. And then you say, oh yeah, well, you're going to be showcasing at this giant art organization, and you have a booth there, and there are going to be 2,000 people there, so we're leaving on Thursday. That has happened in my life before. And I just share that because I want people to know sometimes you have to trust those other cast members. When you think about your life as a show, trust them and allow them to see things in you that you don't see yourself. And I just want to thank you because you've done that so many times, and that has really helped drive our business as well.
And I think the takeaway from that is that just support, how important support is when you're, reaching into an area that feels unfamiliar, or you're, experimenting with something new, that it is supposed to feel scary, and that support is a critical part of that, whether it's another one person or whether it's a community. Sometimes it's for accountability, sometimes it's just for encouragement, but it's no one does any of this alone.
I couldn't agree more. Let's fast forward a little bit now. And so now we have bought a house, and we have a young child, and our firstborn, Noah. And I really, for whatever reason, have had this overwhelming feeling that I really want to become a speaker, and I want to share, I want to find my voice, and I want to share this with others. And again, that story goes directly back to the Muse Machine and me being asked to speak to their board and come in and talk about arts and education. By now, I've done hundreds of teachers' workshops and hundreds of guest appearances on campuses, on high schools and junior highs. So they want me to come and talk to the board and talk about the impact that the arts can have on students. And I did that presentation, and that's really what led to some of those people were big executives at NCR and Meade, and they said, hey, wow, that was really good. You can come and do this at my company. And that's what flipped the switch to, imagine if I could go and share this kind of information in a new way, share my talents in a new way. And I'd love to hear a little bit about my first speech and your perspective of, being my biggest cheerleader, and then the Gold Wing Road Riders Association.
First of all, you were scared to death. Like, what do I have to say? How can I speak for an hour? And I can't use all those pieces of my performance that I'm so comfortable with, the surefire laughs, the surefire stories, because they were all silent. And so you took your talents, those things that you did really, really well, the juggling, you had started interacting with like junior high and high school students doing Simon Says, and there was a teaching lesson to that. You took just different skills that you had, like different activities that you'd incorporated into the classrooms with students and teachers, and you just built this kind of, like, I call it the building block of your first keynote speech. You had these big note cards that you'd lay on the floor, juggling, and then there'd be another note card, Simon Says, there'd be another note card, circle in the square, and you would lay them out and literally walk from one note card to the other with very little segue between them, because that message was still evolving and being created almost in front of the audience over those next like 2 to 3 years. But yeah, you were scared to death. You didn't have to put on the makeup, which had been sort of your signature trait as a mime, is that you still wore the traditional white face, and you were without a white face in a suit. So you were stripped of all that was comfortable. And you first of all took the biggest risk by saying yes. And then you invested time, you tried to learn about the organization so you could be personal in your message. You really practiced, how do I go from one part to the next? It was very, very tedious, but yet fully committed, but yet scared to death. And then I'll never forget you, because I didn't go with you. I'll never forget getting the call after that. It was like you were exhilarated because you made it through it without messing up or stopping or stumbling, and that you got a standing ovation. And it was I guess the final part of the success was when you got this incredibly beautiful thank you letter from the organization and the gentleman that hired you to come in, and just glowing about how you were the best rated thing they'd ever had, and everybody stood to their feet. And so it wasn't that you needed that social proof, but it sure helped to confirm that, yes, you are moving in the right direction, you are doing the right thing. And it's all these little baby steps that had happened all leading up to that gave you the strength, courage, power to step into that first hour-long keynote spot.
Wow. Thank you so much for just kind of, putting a bow on that. And again, the way you painted the picture, it's so true. I remember us in the living room with me going over it and over it and over it, and you just being so supportive. And
in fact, I had it more memorized than you did.
Absolutely, and you still do probably. I also would like to just take a step back with that story that you were just telling, and I think all of us in our lives, in our careers, and we get comfortable. Like you said, I was comfortable. I had 6 or 7 pieces that I did that I knew were going to be, wow, this is going to be heavy hitting. And, I'm going to get people to laugh like crazy at this portion of this part of my show. But I also think there's a time when you get so comfortable, you have to stop in your life and you have to look in the mirror and say, you know what, at this point, I probably should not be wearing spandex anymore. And after 25 years as a mime, I had to come to the point where I was like, you know what? It might be time to be doing something else. That's what I want people to hear from this today. Whatever you're doing today is great, but what are you going to do to take it to the next level? And that's what you've brought over and over and over and over in our lives, raising our kids, to my career, is that's great, Curtis, but what's next? So will you explain a little bit about what you did with that sustainment part?
So my favorite quote when I think about motivational speaking comes from Zig Ziglar. And Zig Ziglar says, people always complain that motivation doesn't last. Well, neither does bathing. That's why we do it regularly. And I started seeing that same trend with Curtis's speech, where people would get all fired up, they'd get all excited, and then 2 weeks later, a month later, everybody's back to normal, back to the same old. And so I really believe that it was our duty, it was our challenge, it was our way to help really transform lives, was to create a program and a way to sustain the message, sustain the motivation, the energy, once the event was over. And it came very apparent to me when Curtis was doing these McDonald's rallies, and they have a real problem with employee engagement. They have a real problem with consistency and leadership, but they also have a very, very jam-packed schedule and work environment. And so watching how the message impacted the managers and how valuable it was, I helped create a system that would allow them to integrate it into their day-to-day, sustain the message in a non-disruptive way. And so I guess the point of the question that you're asking, Curtis, is it's not so much the program that I created, because we've created several different programs for different industries, different corporate ecosystems. Sometimes, it's sales people who are out on the road and they're dealing with mobile devices. Sometimes it's corporate and they're in their own little cubicles, or it's something like McDonald's, which is fast food, customer facing. No matter what, the goal was to help sustain the message, because that was a need we were hearing from our clients. But I didn't know how to do learning development or, follow-up content, so I just delved into that to learn about it, to expand that offering from our office, from through Curtis's message. And again, it just goes back to being aware of what your customers need, being aware of what the clients are asking for, being very tuned into what their job is like, their life is like, and how can we provide something that offers value and can grow off of what we've already built.
That's exactly what I was looking for. And I think it's so important that even if you're in a successful business, even if you're in a successful relationship, even if you're feeling good about your leadership style, that you continue to look at what you can do to improve. You continue to look at the marketplace. And that is, to me, so valuable and something you bring to the table every day.
But it's also, again, it's about stepping into the unknown. And I remember doing a PowerPoint, which I'd never even created a PowerPoint, creating a PowerPoint with the help of other experts who that was their thing. So bringing the support in. And then I remember going to a McDonald's restaurant, setting up my iMac big screen computer and delivering a presentation, a sales pitch in front of a group of owner operators who we were asking to invest in this pilot program for McDonald's restaurants. I had never done that before. And it was sort of like acting as if I knew what I was doing and being willing to take the step into that space of unknown and uncertainty. But it was also because I believed in what I was offering. Again, going back to that being true to the brand, but yet being willing to step into a space that feels completely unknown and can be very frightening. And that's sort of what I think I took away from that.
And I would just say, and if you do that enough, the dividends are huge. From that program went into over 300 McDonald's restaurants over the next few years. So that to me is a huge takeaway. So one of the questions I would ask you is, if you talk a little bit about the next 24 hours and you talk about your kind of routine, one of the things that I admire so much in you is your dedication to eating well, to working out, to taking personal time for yourself. Those are the kinds of things that you do on a regular basis that I think makes you the amazing woman that you are. Would you share a little bit with us about your 24-hour regimen that you like to embrace every day?
I am not a creature of routine. So no 24 hours looks the same for me. The priority for me each day has been to be present, to be very centered in the now, to remind myself when I get caught in it that the past is over and it's done and I can't change it. So what? Move forward. But then also in moving forward, not getting caught up in the future and the worry, because most of what we worry about doesn't happen anyway. And so there's this constant like reminder and like just a pulling back to, okay, be right here right now, because it's the only moment that I have any control over. And so that's the way I try to live. When you talk about eating and healthy, and I am very disciplined, I do value my health. I believe my body's my $1 billion investment. So I do try to exercise regularly and eat, but it's not because, I want to be in great shape. It's really because I do believe that my body is my biggest, best investment, because if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. So I would say mindfulness and just really taking care of my health.
I can't just tell people enough that when you see somebody who is disciplined, who does eat to the best of their ability, to make sure that our kids have a family meal as often as possible, to get up and work out even when you don't want to. These are the things I've seen over the years you do consistently, and that gives you the energy to make all of these other things that we've been talking about happen. So if we want to hear from you or find out more about what you're doing, the question is, how can our listeners do that? Where can they go, and how can they learn more about what Elle Zimmerman is doing?
Well, you can go to ellzimmerman.com, work with me. And there you will learn how I help other people creatively strategize their next step, or maybe it's a passion that they've yet untapped or uncovered and they want to venture in a whole new direction. And you can schedule a call and we can chat about what I do and what you do, and if there's a way that I can help you get to the next level.
Wow, I hope you enjoyed finding out a little bit about me and my life with Elle. And, the thing that she brings to the table over and over is constantly saying, what can we do better? What can you do better? And that is the challenge for the next 24 hours. Find somebody that you truly trust. Find that person and say, what can I do better? And really listen to their answer and don't explain away whatever they say. Listen to their answer, take it in, and then act upon and think about what they shared. Hey, thank you for listening to the next 24 hours. It would mean a lot to me if you found this content today valuable, that you share it with your friends. Leave me a review. I'd love to hear from you. And if you want to learn more about what I do, it's really simple. Just go to curtiszimmerman.com. Remember, in order to live the dream, you have to make the next 24 hours count. The clock is ticking.